Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and you know something? As I've been looking through a lot of Pokemon, I gotta say, out of all Pokemon we have, I think Dragon Pokemon are the coolest Pokemon typing alive. After all, we have so many Pokemon that are legendary dragons, and they also have amazing attacks. After all, a lot of the time, Dragon-type gyms are the last we have to fight, proving just how powerful they are. Because Dragon-type Pokemon have such incredible stats, we've developed a little name for some certain Dragon-type Pokemon, and it's called Pseudo-Legendary. Yep, almost every region out there introduces at least one of them. I may make a video later on down the road talking about Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon, but it is pretty amazing to think that some Dragon-type Pokemon are that powerful that they have a category to fit them in a different way. There are so many Dragon-type Pokemon. Everywhere you look, you'll definitely find a Dragon Pokemon, and having one on your side is always a great idea. After all, a lot of Dragon-type experts recommend that we get one, but it is crazy to think that how powerful Dragon-type Pokemon were, that back when Pokemon first started, there weren't really that many. There were just 3 Dragon Pokemon. Yep, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So, why don't we talk about the OG Dragons? I'm of course talking about Dratini, Dragonair, and the first Pseudo-Legendary itself, Dragonite. Dragonite, Dragonair, and Dratini really set the stage of showing how powerful Dragon-type Pokemon could be. It is kind of crazy to think that in the before time, there weren't that many dragons. It was just a very rare as well as a new typing. Well, everything was new back in Generation 1, but it still was kind of a Pokemon like, huh? What's Dragon-type? Nowadays, it's just hilarious to think about someone not having a Dragon-type. After all, we have a lot of Dragon-type specialists, and even some of the champions that we fight in the game own Dragon-type Pokemon themselves. I think we should talk about what makes dragons so amazing, but also, let's go back to where it all began with this OG line. Well, it is kind of sad to think that we only had 3 Pokemon back in the day that were dragon, but you know what they say? 3 is a magic number, and these are some of the most incredible dragons. I think Game Freak thinks so too. After all, getting this line is very easy to get in other regions, but leveling it up is another story as Dragon-type Pokemon level up very slowly. But the payoff for a Pseudo-Legendary is worth it. But before we begin, I want to give a very special thanks to fellow subscriber, Puffy Sparkles. You love Dragon Pokemon? Well, I thought we should talk all about the very first dragons today. Thank you so much for the idea, Puffy Sparkles. But you're not the only one that I'll be thanking today. HTTP Koopa, I'd like to give you a very special thanks for my Dragon jersey. This is worn by Gym Leader Raihan in the Galar region. It's also given to you after you defeat him, and this shirt is also worn by the trainers you fight during his gym challenge. If you love Dragon-type Pokemon, then I would personally say check this guy out and buy a shirt from him. After all, why buy silly stock image t-shirts when you can give an artist like this good business? Also, he doesn't just do Pokemon shirts and Pokemon jerseys. He makes shirts and other things that your favorite cartoon characters and even your favorite video game characters wear. Don't you wish that some of the outfits they wore could be sold at stores? Well, check him out on Etsy, and he's got you covered. Also, make sure to say Professor Palm sent ya. Well, gather around, trainers. It's story time. We're going to talk about a story called The Legend of the Dragon. But with every book, we have to start at Chapter 1. And we're going to start with Chapter 1 with the little dragon that started it all, Dratini. Dratini the Dragon Pokemon is based on sea serpents, or Ryu, traditional Japanese dragons, or Chinese dragons, that were known to bring good luck to those who encountered it. Currently, Dratini is the tallest basic stage of all Pokemon that will become Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon. Most of them stand at 2 feet or under 3 feet. Dratini, on the other hand, stands at a whopping 5'11". If you look very closely at Dratini's forehead, you'll notice it has a small white lump. This is a horn that's only coming in and still growing. Just like all dragons, what's a good dragon without a nice horn to show off? However, Dratini's horn is so sensitive, so please never touch it. For its habitat, since Dratini are oftentimes seen as weaklings, After all, they're the basic stage of dragons. They prefer to live underwater, and they're also great swimmers. Dratini eat whatever food sinks to the bottom. Also, unlike some other dragon Pokemon, Dratini are rather peaceful, and they want nothing more than to live a nice quiet life underwater. Since Dratini live peacefully deep under the water, for so many years, Dratini was considered a mythical Pokemon, and it was also seen as a legend that never was real. It wasn't until one day, after a 10-hour struggle, a fisherman was finally able to pull one up and confirm its existence. But not only that, the fishermen found a small colony of Dratini living underwater, debunking the theory that not only do they not exist, but they're not mythical Pokemon either. Dratini are such rare Pokemon that they also go by another name, the Mirage Pokemon, because so few have been seen in the wild. Well, this also makes sense as Dratini live deep underwater, and sometimes when people see the reflection in the water and see a Dratini, they jump in, but since Dratini are very easily frightened, they disappear, confirming the idea that it was only a mirage and it just was your mind playing tricks with you. While Dratini are often very hard to find, one thing it always leaves behind is its shed skin. You see, Dratini continuously shed their old skin. It does this as life energy within its body steadily builds up. After time, it goes to uncontrollable levels. Dratini sheds its skin so much that it can even exceed the height of 6'5". How amazing is that? Other than looking at its shed skin, you'll also be able to tell in the wild if a Dratini just shed its skin. The main reason why is it'll have very shiny skin and it also will appear very wet, proving that it just came out of that old shed skin. Oh, and whatever you do, do not touch it. Just like with Dratini's horn, its sensitive skin is really not good to the touch, because Dratini will grow either frightened or enraged if you touch it. And yeah, it'll blast you with Dragon Rage. Wow, that's a lot of power for such a baby dragon. If you're looking for a wild Dratini, or you're looking to bond with your own Dratini, I have a great idea of what to do. Take it to a waterfall or look at the waterfalls. Those things are what make Dratini feel very comfortable. Also, in the wild, Dratini like to be under the waterfall when they shed their skin. Also, the waterfall is a place where they really like to socialize, and they even like to make their homes there, because just the sound of water always puts a Dratini at ease. Dratini made its anime debut in the episode The Legend of Dratini. This is a banned episode of Pokemon that never saw an international release. The main reason why is this was the gun episode. In this episode, the warden of the Safari Zone pointed guns and even loaded them at Ash and his friends. He even fired a few times at Team Rocket. Also, Meowth had, let's just say, not a very good costume for a certain scene. All this together makes sense why it was banned and never seen outside of Japan. But, in case you're curious, you can also go find this episode and watch it for yourself. Oh, and in this episode, Dratini was under protection of the exact same warden, and it lived in the pond because the warden cared so much about it. Thankfully, Dratini did make an international debut in the Pokemon Master Quest episode, Beauty is Skin Deep. It was under the ownership of Blackthorn City gym leader Claire. Team Rocket attempted to steal her lovely little Dratini, only for it to evolve into Dragonair and blast Team Rocket into oblivion. In the core series games, Dratini has the ability Shed Skin, which has a 30% chance of healing its own status condition just by shedding its skin, which makes sense. After all, this Pokemon is known to shed skin all its life until it evolves. As of Generation 5, with the introduction of hidden abilities, Dratini has a hidden ability, and it is Marvel Scale, which boosts its defense if it has a status problem. So yeah, sometimes having a status problem can really help Dratini. Sometimes having that shed skin ability, you wish it would not go away. I guess the game developers realized how rare these Pokemon are, so they kind of were pretty nice to us. You see, at the game corners in either the Kanto or Johto region, if you have enough coins, you can exchange them for a Dratini. Yep, that's pretty nice of them to do it. After all, you had to wait till the last gym battle in the Johto region, and also fishing them up in the Safari Zone was rather hard. So, at least they gave us a nicer way of getting it. Oh, and something also pretty nice that they did in Pokemon Crystal as well as Heart Gold and Soul Silver was, after you go to Dragon's Den and you complete the Master's final test, he will give you a Dratini if you want one. So, yeah, I think it's pretty nice that Pokemon decided to say, even though Dragon-type are rare, we're going to be nice and give you one if you want. For the very first Dragon-type Pokemon, I think Dratini makes a very big impact. It's a very loyal dragon if you train it right, and it also can be very affectionate. Also, it's so cute, so how can you not love that adorable little face? But if you want to see how much more affectionate, how much more loyal, and how incredible dragons can be, then let's evolve our little Dratini into Dragonair. Trust me, this Pokemon can change everything for the better. Dragonair, the dragon Pokemon, is based on sea serpents, or Ryu, which are traditional Japanese or traditional Chinese dragons that were known to bring good luck to anyone who encountered it. Also, if you look very carefully at its body, it's long and very slender, which is very reminiscent of snakes. But if you look at its tail and see the end of it, some people could even say that Dragonair is also based on rattlesnakes. For its habitat, Dragonair are said to live in seas and lakes. Dragonair are also really good flyers. This is all thanks to the cute little wings that are upon its head. Because of these wings, Dragonair can fly very fast, and it also looks like a little angel when it flies in the sky. Dragonair's wings are said to be very soft to the touch, but that's not all. If you happen to stroke the wings of a wild Dragonair, it's said it's gonna bring you some good luck today. Also, if you happen to find a feather that fell off of Dragonair's head, then please by all means keep it, as they're seen as a good luck charm. Even though Dragonair has a long, slender body, it stores an enormous amount of energy within there. It's said that Dragonair can alter weather conditions just with ease. All it has to do is discharge the energy from its crystals. As you can see, Dragonair has two. It has it on its tail, and it also has them on its neck. When Dragonair's entire body brightens, as well as the aura that emanates from its whole body, the weather will start to change instantaneously. So, yeah, they're also responsible for bringing us good weather as well as the natural disasters from time to time. So, if you're ever caught in the rain and you want it to be a nice sunny day, make sure that you have a Dragonair on your team. After all, this Pokemon can turn the harshest and most upsetting day into a nice, happy, sunny day. Just like with its previous evolution in Dratini, Dragonair also goes by another name, the Divine Pokemon. One reason is it's been said that if you see a Dragonair flying at the beginning of the year, you'll live a very happy and healthy year. Also, good luck will be coming your way. Another reason why Dragonair went by the name the Divine Pokemon is that people in ancient times thought Dragonair was a god. They saw it as the Pokemon god of the weather, so anywhere that they could find a Dragonair, they would fill the sea and even the lakes it lived with offerings so it could change the weather. After all, people had no way to control the weather like Dragonair did, and those who needed rain would get the rain, those who wanted the sun would get the sun, and those who even wanted nice snowy days could get those. I guess that Dragonair really had its hands full before we had such things as weather people. In some legends, Dragonair also go by another name, and it is the Storm Dragon. After all, this Pokemon has the ability to change the weather, and a lot of sailors oftentimes called them that because seeing a Dragonite would often mean that they were heading into horrible storms, hurricanes, or sometimes they were going into nice, hot, sunny days. Whatever the weather was, this Pokemon became very infamous among sailors. Even though Dragonair has the ability to change the weather if we want to, sometimes I think we forget that it's also a Pokemon and it has feelings. It doesn't always have to be happy all the time. It can be sad, it can be angry, it can be surprised. Everything. It has emotions, so sometimes this Pokemon gets very angry and it makes horrible storms. In fact, some of the worst hurricanes ever have been created by Dragonair. If you were flying in the sky and you flew into a storm, there's often times where you'll see Dragonair in the middle. Some say that this is what Dragonair is. Sometimes not only is it known as the Weather Dragon or the Divine Pokemon, but it's also known as the Eye of the Storm. Dragonair made its anime debut in the episode The Legend of Dratini. In this episode, Dragonair was living in the lake of the Safari Zone, and it had had a Dratini of its own. This was also the Dragonair that was once a Dratini, watched by the Warden. This episode was banned, and it never saw an international release outside Japan. This is because this was known as the Gun episode. The Warden had used his guns on Team Rocket, threatened Ash and his friends with guns, and also there was a certain scene where Meowth had a very well, let's just say the cosplay he had in the scene was not so good. Maybe go check it out for yourself to see what I mean. Dragonair made its international debut in the Pokemon Master Quest episode, Beauty is Skin Deep, when Claire's Dratini evolved into Dragonair, as Claire was protecting it from Team Rocket. When it evolved into Dragonair, it blasted Team Rocket into oblivion. In the next episode, Better 8 Than Never, Claire used it as her final Pokemon in her gym battle against Ash, only for her to lose to Ash's Charizard, gaining Ash his final badge in the Johto region, the Rising Badge. In Pokemon Ultra Adventures, when Ash and his classmates all became Ultra Guardians, every one of them got a ride Pokemon. Lana was given a Dragonair as her ride Pokemon, which she used to fly her anywhere she needed in the Alola region. In the core series games, Dragonair has the ability Shed Skin, which has a 30% chance of healing its own status condition just by shedding its skin, very similar to its previous evolution in Dratini. When Generation 5 came around and introduced hidden abilities, Dratini also gained one. Its hidden ability is Marvel Scale, which boosts its defense in case it has a status problem. So yeah, sometimes having a status problem can be a very good thing. As you all may know, back in time in the Kanto region Safari Zone, Chansey was one of the hardest Pokemon to find. Dragonair also came in second place. Not only that, but both Chansey and Dragonair were some of the hardest Pokemon to find. Chansey was hard to find on land, while Dragonair was hard to find underwater. Oh, and Dragonair had a catch rate of only 45. In Pokemon Yellow, its catch rate went down to 27, making both Chansey and Dragonair some of the hardest Pokemon to catch. Catching them was an achievement, but there were so many times where they would flee and leave you in the dust. Other than being the name of a Pokemon, Dragonair was also the former name of an airline company based in Hong Kong. Pretty funny, right? As you know, Dragonair has so many incredible powers. Not just weather manipulation, but it's also a great flyer, it can be a good messenger, it can take you deep underwater, and it can help you talk with other dragons, which is so much fun. But if you want to see what this dragon can do when it has its full power, then let's evolve it into Dragonite. And as adorable as this Pokemon is, you'll learn not only how powerful Dragonite is, but also how loyal a dragon can be. Dragonite the Dragon Pokemon is based on Japanese dragons or European dragons. It's also based on fairy dragons. But to be fair, Dragonite is based on lots of dragons that we heard from fairy tale stories. After all, this was the very first dragon Pokemon, and it's pretty hard not to see it as a cute little fairy tale dragon. If you remember from the Unova region games, Black and White and Black and White 2, the Nacrene City Museum had a Dragonite skeleton fossil. This means that Dragonite has been around since the prehistoric times, and I gotta say, if that's the case, Dragonite looks pretty good as it hasn't changed much in over 1,000,000 years. For its habitat, wild Dragonite are said to make its home somewhere in the sea and even on remote islands, which are a paradise solely occupied by other Dragonite as well as Dratini and Dragonair, making them all one big happy dragon family. Despite Dragonite's big bulky physique and its small wings, it's an incredible flyer. Dragonite are surprisingly fast Pokemon, as it's been said a Dragonite can circle the entire globe in just 16 hours. Wow. So the next time you have a delayed flight or a canceled flight, go catch yourself a Dragonite. You'll be at your destination in no time. Dragonite are very smart Pokemon. It's been said that a Dragonite's intelligence is that to match of a human's. Oh, and Dragonite also have photographic memories, and they never forget a face, whether it be a human or a Pokemon. Dragonite's intelligence level is said to be so smart, not only can it read books and do math problems, but at the same time, this Pokemon has been known to learn languages. Every single one of them is very easy for Dragonite to learn. So yeah, you could send a Dragonite from one region to another and it would know the language immediately. The only thing bigger than Dragonite's build and brain, as well as its appetite, is its heart, as Dragonite are some of the most caring and kind-hearted Pokemon you will ever meet. Dragonite have been known to save people drowning, as well as to rescue sailors that are shipwrecked or lost at sea. And Dragonite are so affectionate that they love hugs. Giving your Dragonite a hug will ensure a friendship that can never be broken. Just like with Dragonair, its previous evolution, Dragonite also has a hand in controlling the weather. This is all thanks to its mood. Most of the time, Dragonite are very happy Pokemon, and if you look very closely at Dragonite's head, you'll notice that it has a pair of antennae. This helps control the weather. It also tells what mood it's in. When they stand nice and tall, that means they're very happy. When they droop, it means it's very sad. But sometimes these things frizz, and oh boy, does that mean it's angry. Not only are you in for a bad weather, but you're also in for a very sad surprise with an angry Dragonite. Dragonite can be very violent when it's pushed into a corner where it feels threatened. It's so strong, it can smash everything into smithereens before it calms down. Also, this Pokemon has been known to fly very fast, so outrunning it is out of the question. Dragonite's power is no laughing matter. After all, this was the very first Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon, and you know just how powerful they can be in battle. So imagine all of that power against you. Yeah, you're not gonna stand much longer if you annoy your Dragonite. There's been times where Dragonite's anger has caused Category 5 hurricanes. It's even caused horrible tornadoes and horrible rainstorms. So the best thing that we can do is try to keep Dragonite affectionate or happy, because you really don't want an angry dragon coming for you. It is kind of crazy to think that Dragonite can go from such an adorable, happy Pokemon to an angry, aggressive dragon in just a split second. Wow, now that's the power of a dragon. Wow, that got dark fast. Well, there are plenty of other good things to look at with Dragonite. Something pretty cute about Dragonite is, despite it being a Pokemon, a lot of them have jobs, and that's that they are delivery dragons. Yep, some Dragonite work for the postal service. They deliver mail, they deliver packages, and they also deliver pizzas if you need them. So yeah, I think I would take a pizza, a package, or anything from Dragonite. After all, getting anything from Dragonite is said to bring you good luck. One thing Dragonite loves so much is children. Dragonite are so affectionate around children, and they love to play with them. So, in case you need to go out for the night and you need someone to watch over your kids, why don't you get yourself a Dragonite? Not only do Dragonite love to play games, but they also really like to make children happy. Dragonite made its anime debut in the Pokemon movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. It was a delivery dragon who delivered an invitation to Ash and his friends from Mewtwo as they were invited to New Island. A lot of trainers in the anime own Dragonites, including Champion Lance, Gym Leader Drake, Professor Oak in the Mirage Mastermind special. Oh, and even Ash Ketchum and Iris managed to catch this incredible dragon Pokemon. If you remember carefully about Iris, her Dragonite was much different, as hers was a very aggressive and a violent Dragonite. While it didn't like to hurt people, it still always liked to fight for its pride and always saw itself at number one. Also, this one had smaller eyes and a very angry attitude. This was a huge contrast between Ash's Dragonite that not only saw Ash as its best friend, but also saw Pikachu as a brother, and this one was always happy, gave hugs to anyone it met, and also really liked being around all sorts of people. In the core series games, Dragonite is the odd one out of the family, as unlike its previous evolutions with Dratini and Dragonair, Dragonite does not have Shed Skin as its ability. Rather, it has the ability Inner Focus, which protects Dragonite from flinching. While Dragonite's ability might be the odd one out, it still stays in the family with the same hidden ability introduced in Generation 5. Dragonite's hidden ability is Marvel Scale, which raises its defense if it has a status problem. Dragonite also serves as the boss Pokemon for Champion Lance's team when you fight him at the Indigo Plateau. It also must be his favorite Pokemon, because Lance owns 3 in his battle. Then again, this was also back in time before we had the variety of Dragon-type Pokemon like we have today. And in Pokemon Ranger, Dragonite is a possible ride Pokemon that can get you place to place. However, you can only capture it after your 6th mission, and it's also a very hard Pokemon to catch as it always runs very quickly and it uses Dragon Claw. Dragonite was the very first Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon ever, and it paved the way for other future Pseudo-Legendaries. Almost every one of them has been a Dragon type, except for Generation 2, which introduced Tyranitar, and Generation 3, which introduced 2, but also introduced Metagross. Even though these 2 aren't dragons, they still stand as strong Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon. But Dragonite paved the way for future dragons to become Pseudo-Legendary. On a rather sad note, next to Hydreigon, Dragonite was the only Pseudo-Legendary Pokemon from the past regions until Kalos that did not receive a Mega Evolution. Why? Tyranitar did, Garchomp did, even Metagross and Salamence got one. It's just sad that they didn't give a Mega Evolution to the first Pokemon that paved the way for other Pseudo-Legendaries. Don't worry, Dragonite, even if you didn't get one, we all still love you. You are an amazing dragon. If you're against a Dragon-type Pokemon and you need to find out its weaknesses, here's something that you should know about both Dratini and Dragonair. Both of them are pure Dragon-type Pokemon, so their weaknesses are very simple. Of course, they are Ice-type and Dragon-type. As you know, just like Ghost-type Pokemon, Dragon are weak to themselves when it comes to attacking. But this is what it used to be, just Dragon and Ice for a very long time. It wasn't until much later when they gained another weakness. And that final weakness came in Generation 6 when they introduced Fairy-type Pokemon. Fairy-type Pokemon are a double-edged sword against Dragon-type Pokemon. The reason why is not only are Fairy-type Pokemon strong against Dragon-type, but Dragon-type attacks do 0 damage, making Fairy-type completely immune, making Fairy a very deadly weakness for Dragon-type Pokemon. When Dragonair evolves into Dragonite, it gains a second typing. As you know, Dragonair and Dratini are both pure dragon, while Dragonite is a dragon and flying type. And if you ever have to take one on, especially Lances, you could use these Pokemon, as Dragonite are very weak to attacks that are Rock type, Dragon type, as you know, Dragon are weak to one another, and Fairy type. After all, Fairy was introduced in Generation 6 and became a dragon weakness, as well as a big pest, as Dragon type moves do not do any damage to them. However, all of these are ×2 weaknesses to Dragonite. Dragonite has one major weakness that's ×4. And those attacks, of course, are Ice type. Yep, if you remember carefully, if you took on Lance or you ever watched any videos, you'll know just how weak most Dragonite are to Ice type moves. After all, Dragon and Flying don't dig the cold, and I don't really think Dragonite likes it either. So yeah, using an Ice type against it will ensure you a victory. And hey, what did I say? Sometimes a victory is best served cold. Oh, and hey, I know that we had to talk all about this line's weaknesses. Now, why don't we look at something better? Let's talk about this line's entire strengths. When it comes to the strength of Dratini and Dragonair for being pure Dragon-type Pokemon, sadly they only have one, being Dragon. Yeah, while Dragon's both a weakness, it's also a strength. It also is kind of sad to think that in all the years that we've had Pokemon, Dragon's only strong against itself. Even Pokemon like Steel and Poison that only had one strength eventually gained a secondary strength over time with Fairy. Let's hope that in the future, Dragon-type Pokemon gain a secondary strength. It's kind of sad that they're only strong against each other and that they're weak to one another. Thankfully, since Dragonite is a dual-type Pokemon, it's gained a bunch of other strengths than just one. So, if you're going to use Dragonite competitively, it has moves that are super effective on Bug-type, Fighting-type, Grass-type, and of course, Dragon-type. But Dragonite also has an immunity unlike its other previous evolutions. That, of course, is Ground-type. Yep, because Dragonite is a Flying-type Pokemon, ground moves will do 0 damage. After all, this is a dragon that flies high in the sky. For the first dragon and pseudo-legendary dragon, I have to say Dragonite, Dratini, and Dragonair started this on a very high note. These are some of the most amazing dragon Pokemon ever, and I have to say, it's kind of crazy to think that with all the violent and strong dragons we have, even though a lot of them are really great, it's kind of ironic that the whole line started off with such cute and affectionate dragons. Back when people got red and blue, as well as red and green in Japan, Dragonite was one of the hardest Pokemon to get, not just because it evolved at level 55, which at the time was one of the highest levels, but it was because Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite have a slow leveling up. But sometimes good things take time, and I gotta say, getting a Dragonite at the end of all of that leveling up was worth it. I've come up with a little hypothesis for the Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite line, and it's the fact that even though we've seen Dragonite's skeleton, well, the fossil in the Nacrene City Museum, is it possible that the skeleton hasn't changed, but the habitat and also their typing has changed over time? I mean, since they've been around since prehistoric times, and also they really love water, is it possible that maybe back in time before Dragonair gained wings and Dragonite also had wings, they were marine dragons and they were dragon water typing? I'm just wondering, because these Pokemon really love water and they also make their homes towards water. It does make you wonder, do you think that maybe in a future game we could see prehistoric versions of them being dragon water? Whether you love dragon type Pokemon, you don't like dragon type Pokemon, or you're okay with dragon type Pokemon, you can't deny that dragons have been around for such a long time, and not only have they gotten even more incredible and powerful with time, but they will never go away as some of the coolest Pokemon designs we ever have. If you're looking to start making dragon Pokemon teams, then I personally would suggest you start off with a Dratini, evolve it into a Dragonair, and finally get a Dragonite. Having these Pokemon on your team, you will finally understand the legend of the dragon. And unfortunately, this is where we reach the end of our story. But I hope you enjoyed learning about the legend of the dragon. And I'm curious to know from you trainers, who's your favorite dragon type Pokemon out there? Also, when it comes to pseudo-legendaries, are you a fan of the Dragonite line? Or do you prefer another pseudo-legendary dragon line, kind of like the Garchomp line? Who's your favorite dragon type Pokemon? If you could be a dragon type expert, what would you have on your team? And would you be a champion, a gym leader, or even an Elite Four member? Oh, and finally, the biggest question of all is, who do you think is the best dragon type expert out there in the entire world of Pokemon? Dragon type Pokemon will always be at our side, and they are some of the most powerful creatures out there. So, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions out there, you want me to talk about another dragon type line, another Pokemon line, or you want to answer any of the questions I threw at you, please comment. And as always, if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, smash that subscribe button. Puffy Sparkles, a final thank you once again for giving me the idea to cover this great dragon line. I hope you enjoyed this video to the fullest. Thanks for watching, trainers. Palm out.